Awesome. Well, thanks, Eamon, for joining, and welcome everyone to our first edition of Optimus Labs webinars and podcasts and event series. This time we have Eamon Elsava, who is head of security at multiple AI tech startups, and we're going to be talking about how we can get AI built without getting breached. Eamon, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nipun. Thanks. Glad. Thanks for having me, and got my cappuccino here, so I'm ready to go.
Awesome, awesome. That's great to see. And morning, afternoon cappuccinos are the best. They get you in the zone. Um, so, look, we are all going through a major transformation in tech, in cybersecurity, trying to wrap our collective heads around how to secure our AI products, tools, systems, whether we are using them as subscribers of different tools and models, or whether we build them on our own. So, we'd love to get an introduction to yourself and your background, and then we can start to get deeper into some of these topics.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me. So, Ayman Elswa, I've been doing security for some time, and for the past about 6, 7 years, I've been functioning as a head of security at various high growth fast startups. In the past few years, I've been doing security at AI native startups and AI first startups. So, it's been wonderful. It's been interesting. But even in the last 6 months or a year, been dealing with just AI governance and just kind of how do we lock down and how do we improve or how do we allow people to do what they want to do with AI, but do it securely, yeah, right? So we want them to do those things, but how do we get them to do things securely? Because these requests they're new, they've never been asked before, where the finance person wants to connect to production to see, what the margins are, right? They want access to the database. They're like, yeah, Claude told me to do this. And we're like, oh, okay, hold on a sec. Let's help you get there. So anyway, we'll get into it, but it's interesting time, basically. TLDR.
Yeah. And as the founder and CEO of Optimus Labs, a company building security solutions to address these challenges, what we hear about this topic from different customers is, we can't stop our teams right now. We want to get AI first as a company. We want to have obviously developers. If they aren't using AI right now, you're definitely living in a different era under a rock. That's likely not to happen, hopefully, as a tech company. And,
You'd be
you know,
surprised,
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there's some restriction somewhere
hmm
locking that capability for some developers. Um, but beyond the developers, we see business users, whether it's the finance teams, as you mentioned, HR teams, executives who are not coding but can produce code, obviously, thanks to the capabilities of these agentic tools.
hmm
Also, can do a lot of data wrangling to sensitive data that they're having access to. So I'm curious, from your point of view, how does a company get started? Like, what comes first, security or AI?
Oh, that's a tough one. What comes first, security or AI? Well, I mean, security is important. I think so. The challenge of our jobs, right? Our jobs have always been the case where we want to help people do what they need want to do, but help them do it securely, right? And it's always been my philosophy has always been, and the modern philosophy has always been, build guardrails and not gatekeeping, right? What you don't want to be is, and actually we've tried so long to not be the business of no, right? A lot of times people have, I don't want to use the term lightly, but a form of PTSD when they encounter security teams and say, you guys are always the ones blocking me from doing what I want to do, right? Historically, security teams have always been that. So anyway, to answer your question, it is possible there is a world where we could do both, right? But for example, from my perspective, from the practitioner perspective, I can't fix what I don't know is happening, right? So the number one thing I need to do is have visibility into what people are doing, what are the use cases, what do they want to do, right? I think it's having a good, some level of empathy. I mean, that's generally what a good security practitioner is, but also helping educate folks on like why we can or cannot do certain things is also another part. So I want to understand, you know, what are we trying to do, and then it's up to me to come up with a solution and be creative as possible, right, on how to get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what I've appreciated you knowing you for so many years is the empathy you bring to these conversations,
Oh, I
right?
appreciate that.
And I think a lot of times as security professionals, we have our own mandates, we have our own KPIs to make sure guardrails, security controls are implemented appropriately, and the purpose of their existence gets lost in these discussions, right? So, let's say I am an employee in your team, willing and excited to use AI, and I want to manage our production databases using AI, right? What are some of the risks that you would educate me on when it comes to using this securely? And how would you implement controls for something like this?
Yeah, that's a good one. So, first, kind of educate them on how we treat production, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
What the impact of accessing production, why, what are the cases of when we actually need to access production, and tell them, hey, even engineers are not, most engineers are not supposed to access production, only but only like in an incident, theoretically, right? And we're talking depends on the level of size of your startup, right? If you're like a 5 or 10 person startup, everybody's doing everything in production. There's no other. So we're talking some sort of maturity of a company. Say, hey, listen, I can get you that data, okay, but you don't have to actually access production. I can create a replica database for you, right? I can get some information somewhere else in a read-only fashion, and then you can have at it with that database. Go ahead, right? No impact there. So I hear what you're trying to do. You're trying to get production information so you can put the numbers in and understand what your cost and what your profit margins and all that kind of stuff. I get it. I'll get you that data, but here's a better way of doing that. They're like, oh, okay. And as long as it's reasonable, they're even willing to wait some time while we set that up and get that to them, right? Um, so again, it's about training them, understanding what they're trying to do, and but then helping them get to what they're trying to do in a safe manner.
Yeah.
That's all it is, really.
Yeah, that's a great alternative option, right? So you don't have to directly impact any system that is critical for availability and customers. At the same time, you get the opportunity to use AI, you know, get knowledge for whatever you're trying to wrangle data within that ecosystem of sensitive databases, but not affect anything mistakenly, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I don't think any employee is looking to destroy production, or any
No, no.
employee is not looking to cause a data breach intentionally. This is the uncertainty we buy as we buy these AI tools, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, nobody has, and there's nobody has the intention. There's several levels of abstraction that you can go. You could even create, pipe it into like Snowflake or Sigma and create a more restricted view, and then say, okay, point your agent to here, and we give the agent a special key that even maybe the employee might not even see that key, right?
mhm,
Um, or maybe the agent might not even see that key, right? So like, there's many levels of abstraction that we can go. It really depends on our environment and what we're trying to protect. We just do need to keep in mind. It kind of goes back also to like permissions. Whatever permissions that agent has can do, right? So if it's doing it on if you have read write and you're giving that to the agent, well, then so we want to start off from a preventative approach, but at the same time, which is kind of comes to what some of your tool provides, is like, I need insight into what the agent is trying to do, right? How do I know that the agent is not trying to take that data and like pump it, put it on the Google Sheets that's public, right? Or whatever it may be, or share it with the whole company, or share it with like customers. So we just want to know what tool calls are being made from the agent as well.
right. So as you mentioned, we can't secure what we can't see.
Yes.
The cliched old adage is more relevant than ever in the age of AI. Um, with that,
Cliches work. Cliches work. There's
cliches
truth
do
to
work.
them.
I think in security we see history repeating so many times.
Yeah.
I agree, definitely. So let's say you do have an appropriate level of visibility now, where you can see the entire inventory of AI tools in your environment. The attack surface, including MCP, the skills that they are privy to, in addition to the runtime activity, the tool calls they're making. Um, what next? How would you now, with that knowledge, govern and secure these systems?
Well, we'd probably audit to what tool calls were safe,
Mhm.
comfortable running, giving complete permission, or asking or blocking, right? So, there's several for each tool call. Do we want to completely block it, completely allow it, or maybe something in the middle where ask permission each time it wants to make that call, right? At the same time, we want to segment our user population into different risk categories, right? Marketing might be has a different use case than say engineering, right, or research or whatever. So all the different areas of organization have different risks, and we could apply those. So we have the tool call mapping and permissions, and we have the user population, and we map what's okay and whatnot, and then also continually like revisiting, right? We want to bring our users in with it and say, hey, this is it takes a village, and if you find something that's not working for you, let us know, and we'll kind of attune it accordingly. I
Yeah,
think that's a good starting approach.
it's a good one because you want to understand the use cases. You will never be able to understand them fully because they change based on the capabilities of these
Hmm.
tools as well as the business needs arise. But totally a good starting point, going from 0 to 1 in AI security for any
That's
team
right.
right
That's right.
now. Um, in this space, there's not a lot of historical knowledge that we can reuse, right, when it comes to AI security, because AI systems didn't exist, what, 3 4 years back, that were being used at this scale. What are some of the frameworks or solutions aligning with those frameworks that you've seen that are interesting for security teams to track and use to set up a program or understand their program's maturity as they embark on this ride?
Yeah, there is. I mean, from if you're talking about traditional compliance frameworks,
Mhm.
there isn't much right out there right now. It's all being written right now. There is, I think, looking at some of the frontier labs, they have a lot of posts on how they manage security of their agents, and I think that's one of the best, resources to follow for you to take in and how you manage your security, right? Um, so looking at how the Frontier Labs manages security, reading incidents, right? And we have, a few incidents that have happened just, past couple weeks that we could talk about. And kind of really helping with your tool sets, applying what you traditionally know on how to manage security from an attacker or insider threat, and applying that to agents. I think it's going to take a mindset shift also, just like knowing that you have agents that are very powerful, and that power is gonna be a little harder to contain, right? And working accordingly with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody has a perfect answer right now to these
No.
challenges. Every day, the capabilities change, so our security needs evolve accordingly as we get more and more used to these products in our ecosystem. I did want to give a shout out to ARM. This is a framework developed by Harman Eriko from Vanta. It is a cloud security alliance project now. This helps you understand how to do allow listing, deny listing on specific tool calls, prompts. So something to track towards if you're beginning to look at policies in this space, already implementing, going from 0 to 1 in AI security. Um, Can we take a little bit of a break and look at some audience questions as they have started to trickle in, and then we'll get back?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Um, Harshit Ruwali asks a question about the DEF CON and Black Hat badges. What can
Oh,
you
and the
tell us a
badge?
story about how you have so many?
Yeah, well, yeah, so it's good that they picked that up. I often get asked if they're running badges or not, and these are the kind of the more selected badges that are like quite interesting. As you know, DEF CON has every other year is an electronic badge, and then the other year is a plain badge. I still didn't even put up last year's badge. It's still here on my desk. So that was from 33, and I'm looking forward to this year's badge. This one here is a Raspberry Pi piano, which is pretty cool. So yeah, good question. Security and coffee are my two things. So yeah, these are just some fun badges I've collected over the years.
Other than DEF CON Black Hat, is there any other conference included in there?
Yeah, there's Pacific Hackers, there's, Hack the Bay, there's a couple that there's a Cloud Village from here. Um, this one is a Bay Threat. I think, Nipun, that's where I met you, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a conference that's no longer around, but
yeah,
Bay Threat was one of the unique local security meetup conferences that we had in Bay Area.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 That's where we
Okay.
met. It's kinda
One
funny.
more question from Stone Burnett. He's asking, have you found Shadow AI to be more of a people problem, a tooling problem, or a governance problem?
Shadow AI. Listen, I try not to blame people too much, right? So if they don't know not to use it, then who's to blame, right? It's us because we haven't informed them, right? So again, I try to take the educator approach. You can't like ding people for using something if they don't know they're not supposed to use it. Um, I think I mean, it's the same as Shadow IT. So it's a combination of governance, having some sort of way to prevent people from using non-enterprise AI is super key, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now, right? But it's easy to solve, right? So, for example, if you're say you have an enterprise Claude subscription, well, how do you make sure that your users are not using their personal Claude subscription? It could be by accident. It happens all the time,
Yeah,
right? Well, you could just push a registry, if it's Windows or a plist to Mac via your MDM to prevent them from signing in to other organizations. So that's
there
a
we go.
technical control
Yeah,
to fix it. It's like
yeah,
super straightforward, right? I mean, if you don't have MDM, then we have another story we need to talk, right? So, but these are all things that are possible. So again, it's a probably a governance technical control, if I were to say.
yeah. So I agree. I think we can't blame people. We are all trying to go deep into AI as a society,
Yeah.
and especially at work, we are being asked to meet some AI rubrics that wasn't the case until last year. And then absolutely, like this is definitely a tooling, partly a technology, and governance challenge, right? So totally agree.
Hmm.
Let's get back at it. I think one of the interesting challenges we start to kind of understand when it comes to enterprise acceptance and adoption of these tools is zero data retention, or
Oh,
ZDR, right? Um, a lot of products do come with some legal guarantees around zero data retention. But for our audience, what's a good way to understand this capability, control, guarantee? How would you characterize it?
yeah. So let me explain. So zero data retention is a philosophy, I guess you could say, is a control that you work with your AI providers to ensure that they do not retain any of the data that you submit to them, and they do not train their models using that data. Now, this is a really super important thing. Having been with AI first companies, that is a number one question we get from customers. How do we know, or what things you have in place to ensure that you are not training your models with our data, right? So at the end of the day, it's a contractual thing, and you also have to make sure that the enterprise or the frontier provider has it enabled. There have been cases, and I've heard of folks where they thought they had ZDR enabled, but it was not actually enabled, and they're like, "Oops." So you have to make sure your provider has ZDR enabled and it stays enabled. Um, but what that means is that there will come with limitations, right? So, for example, Fable 5 does not have ZDR and will probably likely never have ZDR uh, supported, right? And so that, because it takes, well, I don't know why, but it takes work for them to enable it, and maybe they need the data for training. I'm not going to
I
talk on
can
behalf of Frontier now.
surmise a little bit of why.
Oh yeah,
Just,
I'd love
just
to hear.
yeah, just thinking a little bit about like the cyber capabilities and the signing forms and papers going around in the internet right now.
Mm,
This discussion of how OpenAI managed to escape sandboxes and hack into Hugging Face. So the cyber capabilities of these tools are currently not very well understood, even by the frontier labs themselves. And this
mm.
is where some of the challenges arrive. And if you have ever used Fable, anybody here who has used Fable probably knows that the guardrails are way too strong, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
what happens is if you're trying to be a cyber defender or part of the blue team, and, these guardrails get into play very quickly, and you can't actually go deep. So they have to continue to monitor the use of the guardrails and whether or not it's tuned effectively. So they want that data and they want to analyze it, they want to improve on it. As a product builder, I can totally see the justification of this, while it's difficult for enterprises to bring the unlock for that model's capabilities internally, especially if sensitive data is going to be involved.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And also, just FYI, when you do have ZDR enabled, they do have a clause that says that they will still monitor for safety. So if anything triggers a safety mechanism, they do have the right to look at that data within 30 days, something like that. You have to check
Hmm.
your contract. So read the fine print on that. Um, so it doesn't give you carte blanche capability.
So
On what you mentioned is actually pretty interesting. That's Hugging Face ran into. I don't know if you want to talk about the Hugging Face incident now, but they actually
yeah,
ran
yeah.
into that same
Just to
issue where
yeah,
they
just to
tried to
quickly
use
close the loop
Opus.
on this. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Hugging Face incident. So Hugging Face published a blog post that went through the excruciating details of what happened, and it's like reading a sci-fi novel. It's fascinating. But one side note is that they actually did try to use Opus as a way to help with the investigation, and then Opus balked and flagged it, and so they had to resort to an open source model
Mm.
to continue the investigation. So that's fascinating in of itself. But reading the blog post of how the agent got out, the agent was being tested against some cyber benchmarks, and it decided, oh, you know what, let me just change the benchmarks instead of actually trying to execute this. And it's like, it really made me think of the movie Ex Machina, which was like, fascinating. I'm not going to give it away, but if you've ever seen the movie, it's fascinating. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the incident?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely an unprecedented incident that deserved the kind of attention it's getting for sure, right? Um, you know, Hugging Face is a unique company and a unique product where they host. For those who are uninitiated, Hugging Face is like GitHub for AI and
Mm,
ML models. So you can host your own ML model, AI model there. Many existing frontier labs and tech companies already build and host models there. They also provide an inferencing layer, so you could use the model directly using Hugging Face inference layer to use with your agents and whatnot. So interestingly, they also hosted or happened to host some cyber challenges, like Exploit Gym or Cyber Gym, which tests and evaluates the capabilities of models. Um, and this is somehow the reason for why OpenAI CyberSoul 5 I don't exactly know the version number of their model, but the cyber focused latest model was able to escape the sandbox in a drive to solve that exploit Jim's cybersecurity challenges, which is such a fascinating thing for it to do and defeat all possible security controls that Hugging Face had in their infrastructure to get to a point where it invented and developed new zero days and you know try and attempt data breach at Hugging Face.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, the first way it got out was that it just exploited as a 0 day in a package that was just available.
Mhm.
But the way the agent functioned, it didn't have direct access to Hugging Face necessarily. It sent data sets to a renderer. So it sent a malicious data set as if so like it's just like if you're uploading something to GitHub. It uploaded a data set to a renderer and knew the renderer was going to function. It executed it and then uh, able to send the data to a dead drop somewhere else, read what happened there, and then would redo the loop again. So it just had the patience of a machine to just do this indirect exposure,
Yeah,
execute something remotely, right, without seeing the output, sent the output to a dead drop, reviewed it, and then tuned it accordingly, and just kept going. It was
yeah. I
just
think
fascinating.
this is like a long running loop for an agent, essentially, right?
Yeah,
So
it's like table stakes for the agent. It's like, okay, don't worry,
yeah,
I'll do it.
for a human, this could take maybe hours or days to execute, right?
Yeah,
To manually go through, the data dump, and 'cause we've both been pen testers, right? So doing this would definitely take us days effectively if we are to exploit
at
this.
least,
Yeah,
at least, yeah.
for
They
sure.
did it in hours, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
minutes, really.
Fascinating. Getting
Hmm.
back to GDR for a second.
Sure.
Um, Recently, as some of you may know, um, I discovered a potential data breach on my own machine. This was due to the fact that I love testing out new AI tools and agents, and I was very excited to test out Grok's new coding agent called Grok Build CLI. And I downloaded that tool probably like a month and a half back or something. And the test machine where I have all this started to become full for some reason, like disk space issues. Um, I realized like I don't understand like why it's getting full. I have not installed so many new things recently. Turns out upon investigation that Grok build was silently creating an upload queue to take all of my Git history, repos, and whatever else comes with it, secrets, IP, everything. And this is what was discovered by some other researcher in parallel. And we realized this, and we quickly developed an open source product called Grok Patrol to conduct a forensic investigation of machines who had Grok installed to figure out what was exposed, whether you need to rotate your credentials, secrets, or understand deeper into how to stop using Grok. I mean, the real remedy here is to stop using Grok because the reaction from XAI or SpaceX now was that we will open source the product, right? Let the sunlight be the disinfectant, right? So somebody will
Mhm.
hopefully patch it because they figured out they couldn't. And a lot of their initial reaction was focused on ZDR, like, oh, for enterprises, if they're using Grok, we have ZDR enabled, so don't worry, we'll take all your data, but rely on this ZDR as a deterrent from a legal point of view, that we will
Crazy.
not use it for training or we will not abuse the data that we have accelerated. Is that a control that enterprises are going to feel secure with?
A control?
Yeah,
I
GDR.
mean, honestly, I think this kinda comes down to trust,
Hmm, hmm,
right? This really comes down to trust. When I use, something that's a black box something that's a black box, right? A model, which for most of the cases, it's a black box, closed source.
mhm.
Do I trust it's kinda like even when you use a provider, when you use some software, do I trust this provider to do what, they claim to do? Do I trust that they have done the security checks, that there isn't someone in there, intentionally or unintentionally making the models do things that are like, kind of shady, right? So that's fascinating, right? And Anthropic, prides itself on trust. OpenAI, has commercial interest. That's a different story, right? I'm not going to give my opinion necessarily, but I think that's what it comes down to. So I've gotten this question before from customers, like, how do I know that, that ZDR contract that you have in place is actually working? Many people, I mean, you really have no way to prove it. I mean, there's some ways you could put a canary to try to, but you won't know that canary for years, right? Um, so, how do we know that that ZDR is working? It's because you're sending this API call and you're being told, yes, this ZDR is enabled. We are not training your data, but how do we really know?
How do we really know? It's
How do
a
we really know?
fascinating question, and I don't think anybody has a good answer to that today. Probably this is a research project waiting to happen from threat intel companies or canary focused solutions.
Hmm.
Um, Shout out to those if they can build something like that to help us engage on this topic and build more trust in the AI ecosystem, which is missing. Right? I agree. Right? Like there's definitely the legal aspect of it, which makes you move forward with the relationship, but does not quite have that ease of proof that has been provided to you yet.
Yeah, but to your point, right? I mean, if it's happening on your endpoint, you can see everything that's happening there. So that's where you are responsible as a defender to know everything that's going on your device, in
Mhm.
your system from an AR perspective. If it's happening on your side of the fence, you are responsible for knowing everything that's going on. You should know all the tool calls that's happening from an agent perspective. Like, you need to know everything that's going on. Yes, you could get the OLTP, which for folks that don't know, OLTP is the telemetry logging that you could send from an agent. OTel logs. Anyway, you have to set up a collector.
Hotel. Yes, open telemetry logs, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yes, you can do that, but then you are technically relying on the provider to send you those logs, right? How do you have like information firsthand from on your endpoint, right? CrowdStrike can give you a wealth of information on your endpoint, right? A tool like your right, whatever. Anyway, so just having the idea is get that information. If it's happening on your side, you should know what's going on.
Right. So the control has to be driven by your implementation, whether it comes from a third party tool or
Absolutely.
something that you built. You can't trust the AI provider to give you everything right away, right? That you need in order to understand whether or not sensitive data is leaving the building.
Yeah, I think it's too early. I think you just need to have things are moving so fast. I mean, people are pushing code that they don't even read. So, um, so it the whole trust but verify is like take it to another level now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of your experience is also in healthcare
Mhm.
industry, where AI is definitely becoming very instrumental. We have talked to some companies ourselves. In that case, since the value of PHI, is a lot higher in the black market for attackers, right? Um, how would you think about AI adoption in those environments, and what sort of controls, legal covenants we have in place to enable this securely?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, it's funny. Somebody was just asking me today, recently, about how do they get their company. Like, they haven't approached healthcare companies because it's just so hard. How do they get HIPAA compliant? Well, to answer your question, I mean, whatever tool you're using, if it's touching PHI, first of all, let's step back. If it doesn't need to touch PHI, then don't do it. Let's just keep it simple, okay? If
Mhm.
you don't need to have whatever tool it is, I don't care if it's a slideshow generator or whatever it is, or chat client, whatever. If it doesn't need to touch PHI, let's just don't do it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So the first step is to reduce your attack surface, right? Or
Manage.
reduce your threat surface,
Right.
right?
Blast
So
radius.
blast
That is
radius, thank you,
right.
right? Because things can happen inadvertently. I don't wanna say necessarily attack surface, but, mistakes do happen, and we know most of incidents happen because of mistakes, right? Although that might change in the future with AI. So reduce your surface. If you don't need to send your PHI there, don't do it. Now, if you do need to do it, right, then you have to meet certain guidelines to do it safely, right? That means all your tools have to support a BAA, right, a business associate agreement, that you know puts them on the hook as well if something goes wrong. Interestingly enough, HIPAA, if data records or patient records leak, you're still responsible, right? Whether it happens inadvertently or not.
So whether an
Now,
AI did it or a human did it, it doesn't matter to the regulatory body because it's ultimately your responsibility. You're the custodian of personal health information.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
you're still responsible. Whereas in other frameworks, maybe like as long as you've done everything, you could get a pass, right? You know. Anyway, so make sure you have a BAA, right? Now, also, if your customers are not comfortable with training data, right? Because this is sensitive data, you probably want to have ZDR enabled as well, right?
Mhm.
Um, and those, I mean, those are the two legal frameworks that will help you. Another thing also is many customer, depending on your customer, whether they're in healthcare or not, they sometimes care what region your data resides in, right? So if you're in the US, they want to make sure that only US endpoints are being used. If they're in Europe, then they might want to make sure only EU endpoints are being used for when you're doing AI. And then,
Data residency is also part of this
da-
discussion.
data residency is big. And, law firms, Fortune, 500, 100 companies have gotten all those questions, right? Like, where are you sending our data? Where does it live? All that kind of stuff. So I've gotten that frequently from customers. Um, and that's some of the things there. I lost my train of thought for a second, but um, oh, and so also one question that comes up from with PHR or anything is are they training our data with are training the models with our data? And so if you have ZDR, then that'll enable you to do that. So making sure you have a BA, ZDR, those will cover you from a legal perspective, um, and making sure that that data only stays within that ecosystem.
One of the things that you brought up during our discussions around this topic was that, the business associate agreement, although helps you cover a lot of the features from a legal point of view, from a HIPAA compliance point of view, it doesn't cover everything. How do we understand this better? As if there's any healthcare companies looking at this topic, does that mean I cannot use everything that Claude has to offer or any other agentic AI product has to offer? How do we monitor, control, something like that?
Yeah, if you're s- are you, so if you look, yeah, I mean, if you look at the tools, say OpenAI and Claude and Anthropic, they have a list of what's available to use that's covered under BAA and what's not covered.
Mhm.
And so that's going to be your main limitation if that's what you're asking. And so, yes, looking at see what specific tool is covered under BAA and what not. But like say if you use Cowork, for example, that's not covered because Cowork can do a lot of different things, right? Cowork is in a way, right? As of this recording, it's not covered, right? That can change. So I do have to put that in there.
Mhm.
But we do know, for example, that frontier model, like really like Fable 5 and all that kind of stuff, will not be covered with ZDR at any point in the future, right? So that's something to consider. Does that answer your question, or are you looking for something specific?
No, no, I think it does, right? It's not just about the entire tool, but also specific features within the tool. Like Claude comes together with Claude Code, Cowork, and Chat as features. But in this case, as you said, Cowork is not covered with the BAA.
Yeah, and one thing I've run into before with in other healthcare companies before, for example, say they're using a SaaS tool. Let's go back to traditional SaaS, right? We've talked so
Mhm,
much AI, but we forgot about SaaS.
mhm,
Say they're using a SaaS tool, say for like help desk management or ticket management. Sometimes those tools have a third party marketplace where you add a plugin for some sort of functionality. So even though that SaaS tool was covered with a BAA, those third party providers were not. And so we had to flag that those third party providers that they were using are not covered in BAA and they have to stop using them. They're like, what? So, sometimes there's small shops, independent developers or whatnot that, don't wanna sign a
Mhm.
BA. They don't want to have that obligation.
Mhm.
So those are some things to consider when you're, the bigger container of what you're using may be covered, but like third party market plugins and marketplace apps or whatever may not be covered. And so that's something really to consider the scope.
That's a really good point. That the supply chain ecosystem, if it's coming directly with the providers, BAA doesn't include the extensions, the plugins, for that matter, in AI ecosystem. I'm sure MCPs and skills coming from third-party marketplaces are even bundled within the product. It's unclear whether they are BAA covered or not.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are close to the time, so I would love to shape out the key takeaways. What would be the paved path for builders and users of AI at a company who is trying to get AI built, and how should security teams think about it?
Yeah, at this point, my recommendation, I have like a multi-tier approach, right? One is get visibility into what's going on in your environment, right? Two, segment your users by risk profile, right? So again, the finance, sales, marketing, engineering, executives, right? Everyone has a different use case and different risk appetite, and also, just how much they want to use AI, right? Also, don't forget your power users. The power users are going to be the smoke tests for what's to come, right? There are some really good power users that are really taking good advantage of AI, doing some very skilled things. And so those folks talk with them, ally with them, and get that'll be a insight into the future for what other people might want to do, right? Um, and get visibility, have understanding of what you're trying to do. I always like to take a preventative approach. So if anything you could prevent, do that. But in the case of AI, where you want to try to balance like AI productivity and security, you will need a way to get visibility into your AI agent tool calls and be able to prevent specific tool calls, right? So one, visibility, getting the logs, right? You want to get what's going on. Second, uh, blocking individual tool calls, right? So like Gmail read versus Gmail write, right? No pun intended. So and also so first leverage one of the other layers is leverage your enterprise security consoles, right? So within OpenAI and Anthropic in the security an enterprise console, you do have security tools you can do there, right? So you can create groups, you can apply filters based on groups, right? You can disable or enable certain extensions. So do all that necessary work. I call it security, like living off the land, right? Before you go to an external tool, but it won't give you everything. So then, you might need to get visibility, right? Have something on the endpoint that is taking a look at what is going on there. Um, Try to make sure to limit AI tools to only corporate sanction tools, for sure, right? So take the necessary steps from an MDM approach and web filtering approach. Education, I think, is also a key that's often neglected. We are here, everybody's trying to like, go with a stick. But like if you educate people, they're really people want to do the right thing.
Mhm.
They want to do the right thing. They just need to know like what's the direction they need to go to do that right thing. And so just work with those teams, and then always be vigilant and reading, staying up to speed. We are at the time, like basically we went through this during the cloud era, right? When we went to cloud, there was so much going on, and there were no tools to manage cloud security. Now cloud security is so ubiquitous and easy. We are going through the same thing right now. So the key thing to during that time, what helped me was I was just on top of things and trying things and just embracing it. And so you need to embrace it. You need to stay on top, see what other folks are doing, and test it out yourself. You can't you can't just do this in a box. You need to be playing with the tools yourself as a security practitioner to know what people are trying to do. Otherwise, you're just gonna get lost. So those are that's my approach in general. Um,
That's really amazing, Eamon. I think you summed it up well. Start with the native governance and security controls, then dive deeper into the visibility, starting from the endpoint, and then understand use case by use case, segment your users, and finally keep up to date with security.
yeah, yeah, because you're gonna have to
It
iterate.
keeps changing every day
Yeah.
in the stages of AI for sure.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, that's time for us. Thanks again, Eamon, for your infinite wisdom here, and
Appreciate it.
looking forward to hopping on such a series again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And thank you for open sourcing that tool. I love it when companies open source tools. I'm a bit of a, I have SNTS, shiny new tool syndrome. So I like to see new tools, and I love when companies are open sourcing and releasing tools. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for hosting today.
Always excited. Take care.